Welcome to Flip Devotional, the podcast, where each week Martha Shannon, the author of Flip Devotional, the book, and Steve Shannon go over the readings from the week. If you haven't gotten Flip Devotional, the book, it's available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available as an ebook on Barnes & Noble. Welcome to this week's podcast, where we are in the month of August.
Correct.
Which we do not know what the theme is.
No.
We think we know God is involved.
Right.
And
Which probably doesn't rule out the other ones.
No, but we've at least got that much.
Correct.
As we read through, if you decide you totally know what the theme for August is, give us a shout out and let us know. You can do that through, it's called fan mail, but it's just kind of like a text.
You don't get any information from the person.
No, I don't get their phone number or anything. It just shows up. And
I mean, you get they put their name. You get that. You get the message.
Oh, well, yeah, I get whatever message they put
but
in.
You can't find them.
No. Can't come hunt you down and say, are you crazy? You think that's the theme for August? Oh, my gosh. All right. We ready to jump in?
Ready. Let's do this.
All right. So August 4th comes from the book of James.
New Testament.
We've been in the Old Testament a lot.
Yep.
But that's because the Old Testament is longer.
There's more to the Old Testament, so we should be there more.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good stuff in there that people don't pay attention to all the time.
Correct.
All right. So James chapter 1, verses 22 through 27. And up at the top, it says, people sometimes think going to church is all they need to do, but it clearly says here what you should do. So, I think people like having a checklist, really.
Yeah, some idea what expectations are and what you're supposed to do. I mean, if you look at even kids in school, like a clear assignment, mm-hmm. People at work like to know what they are supposed to do, not, here, write this letter for me and go on from there. I worked for a guy who would tell me to do that. I would get some information. And my pet premise is I'm going to write a letter and he's going to then tell me what to do, which was fine. It worked out well. But this is, we talked, I think, before, what are in the Bible, like key phrases. I think we said Genesis, in the beginning, right? This mm-hmm. is, right? I think this is one that I didn't pay much attention till as I was reading and reviewing to get ready for today's podcast, right? And it's pretty simple, right? Starts out, do not merely listen to the word.
Yeah.
Right?
Says anyone who listens but does not do what it says.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to.
Well, the 4 words, do what it says, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, and this is James, right? New Testament guy. I guess this is James, who was one of the 12, right? That James, right? So knew Jesus, mm-hmm. but clearly do what it says, right?
Yeah. And at the very last, it's very clear. It says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this.
Yeah.
To look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world.
Yeah. 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 And I don't know if this is true, but for me, if you try to imagine what was taking place when this was written, and it was probably written in, for sure, the first century, after Jesus' death, right? Mm-hmm. That was like 32, 33 A.D., right? So mm-hmm. It's in that period of time, right? And it's quite often you hear about orphans and widows. Mm-hmm. And from what I do for a living, which is public policy work, that was what we would consider the vulnerable populations, right? Right. I would think. I mean, there were no mechanisms, there's no foster care, right? There was none of that stuff available. There was no Social Security for widows. So that's who in your community was at most risk.
Right.
So I read this as, okay, it's clearly orphans and widows, but it could be in modern day, today, 2026, a broader than just orphans and widows, right? It could be the homeless, it could be people with disabilities, it could be, whoever else it might be. But it calls us, right, into an action, right? And
Yes.
it's clear. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, right? To look after orphans, to do that. And it goes back to do what it says, So this makes our faith an action, right? So it's not a passive faith, it's an action faith. Not always
Right.
not always identified as such. And that's by being passive is what some people, reservations you hear about people not wanting to go to church. Well, you go to church and everyone acts really cool on Sunday morning, but the rest of the time they're not.
Right.
James doesn't say, go to church, sit up front, dress up. No. It really says, do what it says.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
So,
All
kind of a
right.
gem. Yeah.
The next
1, 2, 3, 4,
5
5.
days.
5 days. I think we should just roll these all into one discussion. Do you agree?
Yeah.
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 So this is August 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah. So this is the Hall of Faith. Mm-hmm. This is Hebrews chapter 11.
And it's all of chapter 11 spread out over those 5 days, right?
Yeah, because it's very long.
Uh-huh.
But this is one of those chapters that you could go through slowly, because as you read through it, if you get to a name, someone who is named here, okay, because these are the top dogs.
Yes.
These, I'm thinking your Mount Rushmore people
Could
should
come from
be
this
in
list.
here.
Yes. Old Testament Mount Rushmore. Well, we got some New Testament down at the end, don't we?
Yeah, but if you're doing
most.
a Mount Rushmore, I'm thinking they should be in the Hall of Faith.
Yeah.
Like if you're putting together a baseball team, you're probably going to the Hall of Fame and pulling people out of there.
I would think that would be a good place to start.
Maybe can't take them all, but you're going to make your choices there.
Yeah.
So if you get to someone on this list and you're like, I don't know
who
that
that
is,
Right.
you need to go back and look it up.
Yeah. And also, just Hebrews, did a little bit of research in preparation. We don't know who wrote Hebrews. People think it was Paul. That was always suggested. Paul was one of the authors, or our name could have been an author. Biblical scholars said this Hebrews is not a similar style as Paul's other letters. So maybe it wasn't Paul. Maybe it was someone who worked for Paul, or it could have been Luke. It could have been somebody else, or we just don't know. But the audience, I didn't realize this, was really for Christian Jews. So they were Jewish, but they were following Jesus. So they were, the Christian Jews at the time. Again, first century is when this would have happened, we think. And one hypothesis is that it's really written to those Christian Jews to encourage them to continue and follow with Jesus. Don't give up on the Christian part. Go back to your synagogue. Remain focused on Jesus and do what that does. And these are examples of people who did those things and were considered righteous. But so that's how we get to this place.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So the first verse, excuse me, tells you what faith is.
Yeah.
Clear definition.
Yeah.
Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you have a prayer request, faith is that it will happen, right? Right? So we're hoping for it, but, we're all hoping as a kid for a new bike at Christmas. But this is a different type of hope, right? This is, I've asked, and you could say, do you ask one time? Well, sometimes you keep going back. The persistent widow before the judge, we had that story. And the judge finally said, I'm going to do this just because I don't want to be bothered anymore. But this is, talk to that, but that's what faith is. And assurance, right? And for us, we didn't have the benefit of being one of the 12 or seeing Jesus heal or being one of the 4,000 or 5,000, right? So for us, our faith is the assurance of what we don't see happens, right?
Yeah.
So.
All right. So we start out with the creation. It says, by faith, we understand that the universe was formed.
Yeah.
At God's command. And, there's, I don't know for how long, many years, the discussion of creation or
The Big Bang Theory, evolution, whatever, right?
And, people say, well, how can you prove God created it? It's like, well, that's the whole thing. It's faith.
Yeah.
I believe that God created the earth
Yeah.
because that's what it says in the Bible. I believe that.
Right.
So I don't necessarily have proof of it.
And that's what this whole first sentence is, right? It's assurance of what we do not see, right? And there was a guy on TV years ago, morning show, Phil Donahue, and he did a show, and they were talking about it. And I can remember reading that they were talking about the Big Bang Theory, right? And he said, well, what caused the Big Bang? And there was no answer. But the point is, maybe all that is true, but God caused the Big Bang. So all the things we read about, the first chapter of the Bible, Genesis, that'll all be true. Could have all been the results of the Big, but who threw the switch on, right?
Yeah. But I feel like some people have difficulty with their faith, with their belief in God, because things can't necessarily be proved.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the whole point.
Right.
Is you have faith in it because it can't be proved, but you believe it anyway.
Yeah. 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 It's not 2 + 2 is 4.
Every time.
Every time. But yeah, so it's good.
All right, and then we go to Abel. And I was going to say, is this chronological? But yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess it is.
I mean, it's not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but I think it's sequential, chronological.
Yeah.
Over time. Yeah.
So Abel was kind of the first guy to show faith. And do you want to tell about Abel?
Sure. It's really Cain and Abel were the first two children of
Adam and Eve.
And they were bringing an offering, and Abel brought the best. Cain did not, right? Better offering than, And that really separated them, made Abel righteous. And Cain gets mad and does what?
Kills him.
Kills Abel, right? God still protected Cain, but the point is his faith brought the best, right? And it's kind of like, even today, bring your first offering, which means in our world, we're not all farmers, right? It doesn't mean pay all your bills, put some money aside, put some into savings, whatever, retirement, have a little emergency fund, then give to God. It's start with giving to God, right?
Right.
And that's a faith move. And Abel did that, right? And it was credited to him as commended as righteous.
Righteousness. Yeah.
Oh, we don't want that to speak, right?
Yeah. And then we have Enoch.
Yeah.
And
Kind of interesting Enoch makes the list. I mean, you don't hear much about Enoch. Except he didn't die.
yeah.
But he was commended as one who pleased God.
Yeah.
Right? And without faith, it is impossible to please God. Again, the message is faith, right? We get a definition, a working definition of what faith is. And here it is pretty clear, right? Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So all the good things you do, right?
Yeah.
And the opposite side, if you have faith and do all sorts of bad things, you still have faith, right? So, but even this one, the first one in Hebrews is, right, defines faith. An example, Abel had brought a better offering by faith, right? He was commended as righteous. Enoch was taken from this life, did not experience death, right? God had taken him away, could be found, right? And he pleased God.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. You know, I would like to see, after my life, Steve pleased God.
Yeah.
You seem like that's a stretch.
No.
All right.
No, not at all.
Good luck with that one. Change of coming, I would think. Anyway, so we're on to the next day.
All right, so August 6th, we start with Noah, which, you know, I feel like most people are familiar with his story, but we know Noah built the ark.
And he was an experienced ark builder.
No.
What do you mean?
No, he wasn't. But what I think don't think about is how long it took him
Yeah.
to build this ark. And he was building it because God said a lot of rain is going to come.
Yeah.
Like it's going to flood. You're going to need a boat.
Yeah.
And there's been movies done that depict this and show, you know, people made fun of him.
Sure.
Like, look, there's not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
And there's no way you need a boat that big.
Yeah.
But he kept
And
building.
all those people said the same thing. I'm sure. Yeah, build an ark. You've never built one. You know. And there's no indication he lived near water.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But he had an ark. Right? And he became the heir of the righteousness. Right?
Yeah, because
And
it's just him and his family.
Yeah. And he did exactly what God told him to do. Right?
Yep. And then we have Abraham, who did an array of things, but initially it was he went.
Yeah. Yeah.
God said, pack up your stuff, you need to go.
Yeah.
And he wasn't told where he was going. It was just, you need to go where I tell you to go.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yep.
He said he lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob.
Yeah. And the significance of that is the tent's mobile, right? So again, he was obedient, he was righteous, knowing he was going to go someplace till God told him to stop, right?
I like the line in here that says, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So.
And then with him is Sarah.
Yeah. Now this is Abraham and Sarah after their name was changed from, right? It was Abram and Sarai. Now it's Abraham and Sarah, right?
But by faith,
By faith.
she had a child.
Yeah.
when she was way too old to have
And he was way
children.
too old.
Yeah. But by faith,
Yeah, because they heard the message and was obedient to it, right? And Isaac was that person, right?
right. The last part of this, it says, all these people were still living by faith when they died.
Yeah.
They did not receive the things promised. Then at the very end, it says they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So even though you don't get what you think you should get in this life, doesn't mean it's not been fulfilled, right? Doesn't mean God didn't fulfill it, right? It's kind of like you're not done yet, right? So,
and the next day, we kind of get Abraham again because he offered Isaac as a sacrifice by faith.
by faith,
I mean,
and again, Hebrews 11:17-23.
that was the biggie.
Yeah, because Abraham was told, you shall have a son. Sarah, at that point, Sarah, but kind of laughed. And it's interesting, it didn't laugh like, oh, a laugh of joy. It was more of a cynical laugh. Yeah,
right.
You know, but they have a son. Mm-hmm.
And God has said not just you're going to have a son, but you're going to have
so many descendants.
as many as the stars, as much
Sands
as
on the
the
beach.
yeah, yeah. And so he has this one son,
One.
Isaac, and God says, "Go sacrifice him." And Abraham goes,
Abraham goes.
and he's not like, "Well, but what about
Yeah.
remember all the stars?
Yeah.
Don't I need to start with this one?" And
Yeah.
and he does it. And of course, God stops him before
And what did Abraham say when Isaac said, where's the sacrifice?
God will provide.
God will provide.
God will provide.
That's a faith. That's a faith statement, right?
And then we have Isaac and Jacob, and says Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. Jacob blessed each of Joseph's sons.
Right.
Joseph spoke about the Exodus from Egypt and said, "Take my bones with you."
Yeah. I want to go home.
And then we have Moses' parents.
Who, when Moses was born, Pharaoh said, kill all the newborn Jewish males. And they didn't, right?
Yep.
Found him in
They
the-
hid him.
Hit him, and then they found him in the Nile, the Pharaoh's daughter. So Moses was raised in the Pharaoh's house. But you quite often throughout the Old Testament, and maybe the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel, but it's always Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob
Yes.
as the standard bearers, right? Those are, the God of, so you go on from there. So this is kind of, again, if the theme is faith, Abraham was faithful, right? Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau, but really Jacob stole the blessing of the oldest, right? But got that as well. And as Jacob was dying, he blessed Joseph's two sons, who was already born in Egypt, and they got a part of the inheritance as well. So these are all things they did, right? Mm-hmm. And again, it's faith, done by faith. It wasn't clear of any benefit, right? I mean, it was value, but it wasn't. I didn't do this because it helped me. Or I can see the results. August 8th.
August 8th. So we continue with Moses, and but most of us know Moses' story, but he chose to go with his people. He could have, I guess, just kept living in Pharaoh's house
Right.
and stayed in that.
Right. But he went out to see the Israelites, to see his people who were being mistreated. And one of the Egyptians, this isn't here, but it's kind of a backstory, was abusing an Israelite, and Moses killed him, right? And buried him. And then Israel said, are you going to do to us what you did to the Egyptians? Like, oh my gosh, they know. So that's why he left, right?
I think there's a line in here that's kind of interesting. It says, he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. He was looking ahead to his reward.
Yeah.
For the sake of Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, Christ wasn't a thing back when Moses was.
No, but this is obviously Hebrews, New Testament, right? So maybe this is an education point for the audience, the Christian Jews, right? That Moses accepted the disgrace of leaving as opposed to being in the royal household to follow God's calling. As we are to follow Christ, it doesn't matter what is the sacrifice. You know, we're in the United States following Christ. The sacrifice may be, you know, we go to church, we have different priorities, but it's not what Moses gave up. You know, Moses gave up wealth and power, right? Earthly value. And he regarded the disgrace, right?
Yeah.
Because it was not an earthly thing. And that's was the value greater than the treasures of Egypt. And at that time, Egypt was the place to be.
Yeah.
So, good point.
So it says, by faith he left Egypt. You know, he got all the people out of there. He kept the Passover.
Yeah.
You know, all those years after. It's like, this is what we do. Then we have, by faith, the people passed through the Red Sea. I'm thinking that's really a big deal. If you weren't one of the first ones through.
Yeah.
And you're still, you know, going through.
Well, you're walking through the sea, and even if you were familiar with it, you knew it was the sea because you saw it as you approached.
Well, you got water on both sides of you.
You have walls of water on both sides. I always thought if you looked in there, would you see fish? Would you see?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. You know, and they went right now. I guess you could say the alternative was to be attacked by the Egyptians. But you still went through that.
But
you
still,
yeah.
And, I mean, they could have been like, maybe they won't kill me. Maybe they'll just take me back and I'll be fed and I'll have to work for them. But, you know, look at all this. I mean, for me, who doesn't like going through tunnels and over long bridges and stuff, like, to me, this would be a big deal.
Yeah.
I would have to have a lot of faith to get through there. And I'm probably running a little faster than the people beside me.
Yeah.
And then we have, by faith, the walls of Jericho. We did that story not too long ago.
Right. And they marched.
And all they did was yell.
Yeah.
And blow their trumpets, and the walls came down.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And I can't remember, did God say, if you yell, the walls will come down? Or he just said, do this?
I don't remember.
And then the walls came down.
Yeah. But they were prepared. So they may even know, but they were prepared to attack. Obviously, the walls on Jericho were a significant obstacle.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
But if you're like, okay,
that's why
God,
they built them.
We're walking around.
And
as you're walking around, you're seeing the enormity of these walls.
Yeah.
It's like,
and
oh my gosh.
they did one trip for 6 days.
Right.
They went out every day and did it and left. Right.
And then 7 trips.
And then the last one, trumpets, yell, and get ready. And I guess once the walls came down, everyone knew. Right.
Yeah, I mean, once the walls are down, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and Joshua was there, right? He was, at that point, the anointed one. I'm sure he said, charge.
Yeah.
So, and then another Rahab reference.
Yes. Yeah, because she had enough faith in God that she risked
everything.
taking the spies in,
Yeah.
and hoped that they would keep their side and remember her.
Right. And still, and that did happen, right? Where if she didn't have the face, she could have easily probably gone to the leaders. Said, look, these guys are going to attack you. They got an army. You need to be ready. But she didn't. So, and even this little chapter here, you got, we always want to point out references that lift up women in the Bible. Here's Sarah and Rahab. Again, getting referenced.
All right, so in the last part of this chapter, and, rightly so, it says, "And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about needless Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, the prophets."
Right.
There's so many more who are worthy to be in the Hall of Faith.
Yeah. And briefly, I think we did get Gideon. He was the least of the least, right?
He's the one who was kind of testing
The fleece
God,
dry, everything else wet, and then the fleece wet,
but
everything else dry.
also the one who God kept making
from
his
10,000
army smaller and smaller.
Down to 300 from 10,000 or 20,000, right?
Yeah. Barak was with Deborah.
Barak was with
in
Deborah, very good.
jail.
Yeah. And Barak was the person who was told, well, since you've asked Deborah, who is like the prophet, to go, to be with you, you will not kill Nathan, no, whoever the guy was.
Yeah, I don't remember.
You will not, but a woman will. But
Right.
Barak was a leader and regular leader. We know Samson. Jephthah's kind of interesting. Jephthah was the illegitimate son of some prophet, right? But he was a warrior. But Jephthah, the guy who said to God, if you give me victory over the Midianites, maybe somebody, right, I will then offer up as a sacrifice the first person I see when I return after the battle.
And it was his daughter.
It was his only daughter. Her only daughter. And she came running out of the house, and Jeff said, oh, no. And I think the daughter asked, well, before you do that, can I go to the mountains for 30 days and celebrate with my friend?
Yep.
He said, yes, but he did that very thing, right?
Yeah.
So Jephthah was military leader and obedient, right? And we had David and Samuel, right? Those are people we've talked to. But that's kind of who it is. I also like what happens next year.
What?
Well, right? Women receive back their dead. Jesus did that, right? Right? They were raised to life. The son, right? Of the widow is one example. So they might gain a better resurrection. The resurrection through Jesus would be better, right? Because this have Jesus, right? So they have that resurrection, right? But there also be faced jeers, which Jesus did, right? They mocked him, which is jeering, right? Flogged, he was flogged, right? Right? I don't think he was put in chains, but he was crucified, right? Right? But other of the leaders were in prison. Paul was, chains, right? He was in prison.
Well, and I think some of the other disciples, Peter was
Crucified upside down, right? Or was that Paul?
I think that was Peter.
Okay. Who was stoned?
Stephen was
stoned. Paul was in chains and in prison, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Multiple times. Some of the 12 disciples were executed by being sawed in two, right? And while being alive, and some you're kind of sawed in two at the waist, other you're sawed in two between the head and the torso. I mean, like someone had a preference, and some were killed by the sword, right?
Yeah.
They were sheepskins, goatskins, destitute, persecuted, mistreated, right?
Yeah.
John the Baptist, right, was persecuted, right, decapitated.
But I
right?
wonder if this is really speaking of the 12, because Paul was, I don't know, I always thought of Paul as was younger because he was at the stoning of Stephen,
Yeah.
but he was kind of a boy. He was, I always pictured him as a young person at that point. 'Cause he was just kind of like at the side, and
Yeah.
and the disciples
know.
were already, this is after Jesus' death. They were already older.
Right. But Paul had to be old enough. He was educated, right? And he had to be old enough to get to the religious leaders to grant him the authority to go to Damascus,
That's true.
right?
That's
So he
true.
wasn't like a 12-year-old. He was old enough and has proven himself to the religious leaders that I am going to stop this religious group, right?
Right.
So, but I think this part here, and I don't know if Paul was destitute, but bad things happened to him, but others were, right? So you end up that this is, they wandered in deserts, mountains, lived in caves. But these are the early leaders of the church, right?
Yeah.
So the first, for us in chapter 11, the first 3/4 of it are, and it is Hebrews, letters to Christian Jews. These are our heroes, right, that we heard stories about around the campfire, right? Whether it was Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whoever, Moses, Barak, Gideon. And then you talk about, not by name, but things happened to the early Christians.
Yeah.
Kind of. But regardless, right, if they faced jeers, flogging, chains, they did not give up their faith, right?
Yeah. I was just Googling the deaths of the disciples, and it says James was stoned. Simon the Zealot was sawn in half. Philip, don't know if he was stoned or crucified. Bartholomew, skinned alive and beheaded. So, yeah, it just makes me think that part of what he's talking about is some of them
Yes, yeah.
who,
And I think in this reading, it's the last half of the day, right? The torture, the imprisonment, all that stuff is.
yeah.
And
then,
Stephen wasn't one of the 12, right?
right,
And John
Right,
lived to old
right.
age.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the very last sentence said, "These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect." So again, God's plan, God's perfect,
Right.
isn't going to happen now.
Right. May not happen now.
Yeah,
I mean, it could happen,
yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily mean, right? I've said it before. I always wish God had a watch
Right.
or a day planner, right? Some idea. But it says, I think in the Old Testament, to God, an hour, or it could be 1,000 years, or 1,000 years could be an hour. It's kind of like, on the first day he created, thought it was good. But it doesn't mean it was 24 hours, right? It could have been a million years. I don't know, right? Don't know. But all that could have taken place. But I think this, to me, says God's plan will be fulfilled.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when that happens, right, we will be able to go talk to Barack, right?
And people might say, you know, they thought such and such was going to happen, and it didn't happen, and they died. So what they thought was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, no, not because, you know, like you said, God has his own schedule.
Well, I think that's right. And what we believe God has told us will happen, if it doesn't happen in our lifetime, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? You know, I've told the story before that when this friend of ours who, you know, is 45, I don't know how old he is now, but older, Andy, right? That you want to go to Dairy Queen or someplace. Yeah. And I drove past it. Oh, I didn't mean now. And as long as I'm alive and he's alive, I am not, I can still fulfill that promise, right? You know, but it's not if I die before him and not done that, then yes, I lied. But as long as I'm alive, it's still a possibility. God doesn't have that definitive end time. So when he says this is going to happen, again, just because we want it to happen now doesn't necessarily mean God's let us down. And I think that's the faith message, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't see it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
So,
All right. You ready for the last day?
Psalms. You know, I love Psalms.
So August 10th
Correct.
is Psalm 16, verses 1 through 11. So we finished the Hall of Faith.
Yes.
Glad we got it all in 1 week.
Yes, as opposed to splitting, coming back.
Yes, hate that.
Jeez, it's one of the worst.
So, yeah, up at the top it says, God is your safe place. He is for you. And I know I say this many times throughout this devotional, that God is for you. It's just clear through so many things. He isn't telling you not to do things because he's against you, because he doesn't want, whatever for you. He is totally for you. He's on your side. So there's stuff in this psalm that supports that.
Right. Yeah. You are my Lord. Apart from you, I have no other good thing. So whatever I have is nothing compared to you, right? Not of value, right? You alone are my portion and my cup, meaning you are that, right? You are all I need, right? So.
The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance.
Yeah. So. And the path of life. You make known to me the path of life. Again, if you focus and listen, those things can happen, right?
Yeah. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken.
Mm-hmm.
So you keep God close. You keep seeking him. He's going to be there for you.
Yeah.
It's very simple, very straightforward.
Go back to James. Do what it says.
Yep.
This is a similar thing, same message, different words. But do what it says.
Do what it says. Yeah. Very good.
Yep, that's it.
All right. All done?
All done. Excellent. I did a really good job today, I think.
You did. We'll probably get some fan mail about your
jeez.
great job.
Yeah. Fill up my inbox.
Go, Steve. Go, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's Flip Devotional, the podcast. Again, if you haven't gotten the book, you can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, ebook at Barnes & Noble. Keep reading your Bible every day. That's how you keep God close. And we'll see you next week.